So in December of 2016, my phone went missing. And to anyone who knows me, you also know that I do tend to lose things. So in the past, I've found my phone in the refrigerator, I've left it behind at restaurants, and I've even, several times, left it on the hood of my car. And so when I couldn't find my phone, I thought that I just needed to keep looking. And by the time I was willing to admit to myself that my phone wasn't coming back, that it had actually been stolen, I had been waiting for over a month. Then I decided that I needed to wait until I was back in the United States, or that it wasn't in the budget. I kept finding reasons to wait, and I waited 1 year and 4 months. This amount of time doesn't sound that impressive to me until I started telling people I didn't have a phone and for how long. And the responses I got were incredible. People would say things to me like, "You're crazy, I could never do that, I couldn't survive, how do you do it?" And my favorite response was from a 4th grade student of mine who said, "Well, Miss Tia, you're only like 40 years old. You're not even an old lady yet. You should have a cell phone." And I know what you're thinking, but no, this wasn't just from the stereotypical millennial or Generation XYZ people in my life, but from each and every person I encountered. And so I started to feel a little bit like a technological age unicorn, and I'm not exactly wrong. According to the Pew Research Center of Internet and Technology, the shocking majority of 95% of the adult population in the US in 2017 owned a cell phone, and 77% of these rather being smartphone owners. When you break that down, that's 5% of the American population that didn't have a cell phone. I need to put that in perspective for you by showing you another study, but one done by the US Innovation Center for Dairy, where their survey found that 7% of the adult population in the United States believes that chocolate milk comes from brown cows. Can it possibly be true that there are more adult Americans, because no children took part in this survey, more adult Americans that believe chocolate milk comes from brown cows than don't have cell phones? I started to think, just how rare am I? And so for my age bracket of 18 to 29-year-olds, the percentage is even higher, with an estimated 100% being cell phone owners, 94% of these being smartphone owners. So 100% were estimated to have a cell phone, and there I was without one. These numbers are for great reason. The benefits of having a cell phone, and particularly a smartphone, is having turn-by-turn directions. It's having reviews of products when you're already at the store. We turn to our cell phones to organize our days, to keep us in touch with friends and family. I even have some students who insist that their cell phone is their preferred method for writing their essays. I understand these things, but I'm also realistic. While cell phones have the potential for all of these things, that's not always the ultimate outcome. And when it comes down to it, having this number of cell phones out there doesn't actually eliminate the number of people that don't know where chocolate milk comes from, even though it probably should. So I'm not here today to demonize phones or to blame them for the different problems in our society, but what I am here to do is to share my observations and my experiences from being in this technological minority. As many of you could probably guess, not having a cell phone felt really weird at first. Moving to a new country is extremely difficult and challenging. It's also beautiful and rewarding beyond measure, but it's very difficult. And I want you to imagine growing up in a community like this one, where I essentially went my entire life not actually having to meet anybody, because it's a small rural farming town in northern Michigan. So imagine going from a community like this one to the one here in Santo Domingo. When culture shock was at its worst for me, I could not use my phone to help alleviate that culture shock. I couldn't use it to help me translate from Spanish to English. I couldn't use it to help me navigate the busy streets. And while this was really uncomfortable at first, it soon became more than just a discomfort and began to feel really isolating. I felt the deficit in my ability to function as an employee at school, where professional communications would be sent through group chats or WhatsApp rather than through email. I realized just how often friends and coworkers would have social gatherings to which I'd like to think I would have been invited to if I could see the text that was sent to my now non-existent phone. And I also felt the frustration from friends and family members from home who often communicated feelings of frustration that I never seemed to be able to respond to them quickly enough or frequently enough. So I started internalizing all these things, and people would tell me that I just needed to get a phone, that it was something that I needed, or that I was even irresponsible for not having a phone. And I understand that having a phone could have helped alleviate many of these things, but I couldn't help but wonder many things, and one question I asked was, is my cell phone really the only thing keeping my relationships with the people in my life alive? And there was one question in particular that grew, which was, why do I feel devalued for not having a cell phone? I felt really lost, and I carried that question with me for a very long time. And it took me many, many, many months of observing and reflecting. But I finally got to the point where when people would ask me why I didn't have a cell phone, my answer became less and less because it was stolen, and it became more and more that I was simply happier not having one. I noticed that my productivity improved, my patience with people improved. For a long time, my cell phone had been an unrecognized source of anxiety because up until then, I was never truly able to disconnect from social situations. And as an introvert, that's extremely important for my mental and emotional well-being. I also felt that while I still don't communicate with my friends and family back home as often as I should, sorry, Mom, I do feel like the interactions I do have are more meaningful. Because, for example, if I wish someone a happy birthday at home, they knew it's because I remembered that day, it was important to me, and I didn't have to rely on the notification from Facebook telling me to remember that day. And so after a long time, my question started to evolve, and it changed. And it changed from why do I feel devalued to what are the values I see that other people are trying to add to their lives by using their cell phones. I started observing constantly, and I came up with several conclusions. And the first and most common reason, and the one that I was always the most guilty of, is simply using your phone to hide or to avoid. When I didn't have my cell phone to do just that, I noticed just how often the people around me would do that. And there were so many times that I would be in a conversation with someone to be left watching them use their phone. I would look up in restaurants, and I'd be the only one not looking at a cell phone screen. I realized that not just being in the restaurant, not looking down, not looking at my screen, but when students at school even, when I would see them using their phones, it was often to avoid getting to work. But then I would also see teachers in staff meetings, and they would be on their cell phones, but complaining about how the students couldn't pay attention. And it's incredible because what we need to realize is that when we choose not to come to terms with our boredom, with impatience, with awkwardness, with all those feelings that we perceive as being negative, when we don't exercise those muscles, we lose the ability to use them and they go limp. This is a scene that we're probably all very familiar with, and that's in order to get a view of the stage, it can feel like an absolute battleground. As a photographer at these events, sometimes I feel incapable of doing my job because I'm constantly having to work around people's phones, and sometimes even an iPad screen. My fine arts degree was in graphic design and photography, and so I do understand the draw of photography in order to capture a moment. But we also understand the value of being somewhere in person and experiencing it in real life. So for example, this TED Talk, each of you has chosen to purchase the ticket and to be here in real life, even though these will be available online for free. But each of you came here early in the morning on a Saturday, you're in these seats, and you wanted to see firsthand what it is that our school community has to offer the world. So why do we take photos excessively to the point of inconveniencing others or ultimately missing the experience ourselves? And so I've asked people who are doing just that why they feel the need to do so. And often the answer is because it's important, it's something that I want to remember. And ultimately it's something that they fear that they'll forget. What they want to do is they're trying to capture those moments and keep them, even if they're not exactly living them. Take a look at this room, and what you'll see is the home of a person who has obsessive compulsive hoarding disorder. The environmental, mental, and genetic processes that go into a disorder of this type is extremely complex, and each person experiences this disorder in a different way. However, one of the really popularly collected materials between many of these cases were newspapers. And when they were asked why they collect something so mundane that many of us might even overlook, the response is shockingly similar. And they say that they feel if they keep that newspaper, that they're somehow able to better remember what was going on that day in their life. And they fear that if they don't take that newspaper, or if they get rid of it, that they're somehow letting go of something, that they won't remember it well. They also fear forgetting. So what I encourage you to do is, although we all fear forgetting, especially those most important moments, you need to trust your mind that if you're actually experiencing something, it is something that you will remember. And so please take your photos, but don't trade what is your real experience for what's only just a keepsake. Another thing that I hear very often when I ask people why they're using their phone excessively, and that's, this is for Instagram, this is for Facebook, this is for, insert social media here. And I understand this because social media remains my primary way of communicating with friends and family back home. For example, this is my nephew Austin, and since I've been abroad, unfortunately I missed his birth, I missed just about his entire first year of life, and just last weekend I missed his first birthday party. And this saddens me greatly, but one of the beautiful things of social media is that even though he lives 3,202 kilometers away, I can still feel like I'm a part of his life, and I can see and watch him grow. But I also understand from talking with his really tired mom that what I see is his social media filter. I don't have to see the teething fevers, the sleepless nights, the dirty diapers, the temper tantrums, and all of the other reasons why I don't have children. It's natural for us to try and project our best selves on social media. But the problem happens when what we're projecting is different than what we're living. And then the challenge becomes trying to prove who we are rather than just be or live who we are. We post a photo of ourselves working out so we can prove to others that we work out. We post our best selfie out of 40 to prove how good we can look, and we try to convince everyone that that's how we look all the time. And we'll post a photo of the dinner we cooked last night to prove how good we are at cooking, even if it tasted terrible. There was a study conducted by the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine, and they did a study about the effects of social media. And one of their studies concluded that the more hours a person reported, being on social media, the more likely they were also to report feelings of depression and anxiety. And that there is the paradox of social media, where we feel that we can share whatever we want whenever, but often what we trade is vulnerability. We live in a constant state of connection, but at the same time feel disconnected. I still remember to this day the phone number that I needed to call to reach my friend Carl, because if we wanted to talk, we had to actually dial the number on our landline phones and have a conversation. When I say that to students now, they tell me that they've got feelings of fear or anxiety even at the prospect of having to call someone on the phone or even have to talk to someone in real life. Our interactions are getting shorter, they're getting less vulnerable, and what I want us all to realize is that social media and our cell phones are altering the way that we interact with one another, and this technology grew so quickly and so pervasively that we probably didn't even realize just how much. On Snapchat, it's notorious for being able to send really short pieces of information at a time. Twitter limits your content to 280 characters. A newer feature of Snapchat now is something called streaks. And for those of you who aren't Snapchat users, for each day that you connect with someone on the media, you earn a day in your streak. And so this has become something that people are very proud of. They want to continue their streaks for as long as possible. And so students have reported to me that when they lay in bed at night, they realize, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose my streak. I haven't talked to this person today. I need to do so. So in a panic, and without having to bother getting up and turning on the light, they'll take a photo like this one, a black screen, and send that. to the world, they look like best friends with a 203-day streak. But what are they really saying to each other? And really, is it any wonder why this human being might feel lonely, feeling the pressure of having to communicate with someone but not getting any of the benefits that a more meaningful social interaction could have provided? The future of cell phones is really understanding that they're not going anywhere, and as far as I can tell, technology like Apple Watches or Google Glass is making it even more convenient, more integrated in our lives. And so what we need to do is, as individuals and as a society, we need to consider more safe and responsible ways of using our technology to better our lives. We need to start changing our mindset and more closely connect and consider cell phone usage to that of dieting or physical exercise. While I would love to abandon my current diet and only eat cookies every meal of every day, there is no one on earth that would recommend that as a healthy diet. And that's because the key is balance. We need to understand when we need to draw the lines and when these wonderful things are not so wonderfully affecting our health. When is what we're saying to each other really just black phone screens? It took me 1 year and 4 months of personal observations and reflections to decide that once again having a phone was the correct decision for me. But even now, I have a cell phone, but it's not data enabled because that's not something I need every hour of every day. I know that I don't need it all the time. It's not healthy for me. While I don't suggest, or I understand that many of you guys, this isn't a great option for you to get rid of your phone, that might be too big of a jump. But you can start really simply and reflect and consider why it is that you're taking out your phone. Are you hiding or avoiding? Are you hoarding memories? You're afraid that you'll forget something. Or are you projecting your life rather than simply living it? So I encourage you guys to be participants and observers. So use your phones, use social media, take pictures, play Angry Birds when you're bored in the grocery store line. But also consider why it is that you're doing that, and also consider all the things that you could potentially be sacrificing each and every time you take out your phone. And one last thing that you can do is the next time you leave your cell phone and lose it in the cushions of your couch, maybe you could just let it stay lost, at least for a little while. Thank you.